It's complex, but I know it's something that Yvonne Murphy wants us all to know. She runs the Democracy Box project. We chatted to her, about 15 minutes ago. She stayed with us. She's working with young people to help them understand politics. This is what it's all about, isn't it? So we spoke before about the things we all need to prepare for casting our vote, Yvonne, but we're going to focus more now on the younger voters, something that all political parties will be keen to do in the next 6 weeks. Straight into a question from Dominicia in East London. Is that how I say your name? Is it Dominica or Dominicia?
Dominica.
Dominica, I do apologise. It's lovely to have you on Five Live. What's your question?
I was just wondering sort of how, I don't know, I'm just wondering if like the Conservative government is going to, I don't know if this is a question that can be answered, it's just a general one, but I wonder how like they will pander to younger people, because obviously we're online a lot more, and I think the whole thing of like going out and like giving speeches isn't going to like attract young people anymore. So I want to see like other forms of like reaching young people almost. I wonder how that would happen.
Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 18 years old.
Okay, so you're voting for the first time this
For
year?
the first time, yeah.
Yeah, so you want to know, you want these answers, you want to be spoken to. How does that happen, Yvonne?
Well, young people have told me that they need information in 3 ways, like I talked about. They need it, digital information, but they also need it in schools from age 7 up. And everyone that I surveyed of all ages, 92% of people said that democratic education needed to be done in schools, and it needs to be done creatively and in an engaging way. And that's a tall ask for teachers when they themselves don't understand it. So we need programs to do that. And then we need that same information in people's local areas. So those 3 things I've created with young people. Young people have done all the co-creation with me of the Democracy Box. So we've created prototypes that are ready to be upscaled for those 3. But I think, Dominica, you're brilliant for being on this and asking this question. I think all parties need to be looking at how they create democratic information and education for young people aged 7 up, because they're only going to become older and become the educators and the parents. And that's the only way that we're going to break the cycle of that we've got at the moment, where we've got this really high level of activism in the UK, higher than we've had for years. And, you're talking about it on different news programs about people in encampments and in universities. And then we have the lowest levels of turnout at the ballot box, because people are frustrated and upset that the ballot box is being sold to them as the only perceived way of them getting involved in our democracy. So we need to shift our focus away and instead look at everyday democracy and let people know how they can get involved 365 days a year. Because if they don't know the difference between a local councillor, a member of devolved parliament, an MP, why are they going to turn out to vote? It's like sitting down and asking Dominica to play a game of Monopoly or Cluedo without telling her the rules first. She's just going to get really frustrated and bored and leave the table. So we've got to start with the basics, I think, Dominica.
Yeah, Dominica. When did you get involved with this chat? Did you think about it today, or to Yvonne's point, have you been thinking about it the last 4 years? I can't imagine you have. But when did you start thinking, right, I need to think about this and make a decision and vote? When did that came about?
I mean, I think it's quite strange for me, because I've been raised in a family where like politics is very, very important, and it's something that I've been aware of my whole life. So I've been waiting for the day where I could finally vote. So like this has just been like a lifelong thing for me. And as like she said, like we need to start learning from when we're a kid, because eventually we will grow up to be the voters. And I think what she said was like perfect, because it does need to be like an everyday democracy, not just focusing on one day where we can like make a decision and then it's out of our hands type of thing. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, and I suppose, how do you get your mates involved? How do we do that, Yvonne? How do we get more young voters? How do we speak to them
in the Democracy Box?
Yeah.
Sorry, Kevin. I was just going to say, in the Democracy Box story, we flipped the ways to get involved. So often people are told to register to vote and vote as the first thing, but actually we've put 10 ways to get involved, and registering to vote and vote are at the bottom for number 9 and 10. The first thing is having conversations and sharing with your friends and your family the Democracy Box story, of how our democracy works, and then stepping outside your door and getting involved in your local community. So I always talk about, to all the Democracy Box young co-creators, about a scrap of land that was down the bottom of my road. A load of neighbours got together, they cleared it, they started a gardening club, they put a WhatsApp group, they got everyone involved, then they contacted the local town council and they got some planters, then they contacted the county council and they got funding for some artwork. That's become a place now where the community meet and has become a hub for the community. That's democracy, right there. But we can only do that if we know how to contact people and how our democracy works. And I think what Dominica said about being at the dinner table, that's something that's come up in my research. A small minority have that dinner table experience.
And what issues they want to talk about. And on that, we still have founder of polling agency Delta Poll, Joe Twyman, with us. Joe, talk to us about what the issues that young people, what do they care about? What are you seeing? What do they want these politicians to talk about?
Well, for young people, their concerns are very similar to the rest of the population. In many cases, they are most concerned about the cost of living, the economy generally, and the NHS. But there are particular subjects that are more likely to be important to young people. The climate and the environment is one such issue, but particularly housing. Housing is a major issue for younger people.
Lay out their stalls, but what do we need to do to be ready to cast our vote in just a few weeks' time? Remember, in about 10 minutes' time, actually, you can ask any question you like. You can text us on 85058. If you've got any questions about the general election, please let us know. In the meantime, what do we need to know when we go to vote? Yvonne Murray runs the Democracy Box project, which is working with young people to help them understand politics. Good afternoon, Yvonne.
Hi, good afternoon.
Right, Len, let's get through what we need to know here, because you think it may be straightforward. Sometimes it's not, and it's important everyone does their best to vote. We've seen changes in the election process, of course, with the likes of voter ID. What do we all need to know?
Well, I've done some research for the past 4 years to look at the barriers to democratic participation for young people, but for all ages. And I've worked with young people aged 16 to 26 to help me create different approaches to break down these barriers. And basically it comes down to there's two barriers: a lack of information, basic democratic information, and ironically here, because we're talking with 6 weeks to go before an election, a frenzied focus on elections. So basically we need to break this cycle of only talking about this stuff when there's 6 weeks to go before an election, and we need to be talking about it all year round, because all the young people I talk to, and people of all ages, are saying that those are the two main barriers. They don't understand, and this is the majority of the population, do not understand the basics of how our democracy works and fits together. And I was one of those people, and that's why I'm doing the work. So we've got a problem on our hands if we're going to try and fix that in 6 weeks' time. But there's some quick things that I can talk about that people can do.
Just in that, do you feel like you've been successful over the last 4 years in terms of engaging young people to get involved with politics and to get ready to vote for a general election?
So I know that I've been really successful with over 70 young people that I've recruited as co-creators to do this work with me, and hundreds more who've tested the stuff that I've done and helped me with the research.
So young people informing young people is quite a powerful way to do it, I suppose.
It's totally peer-to-peer learning, and also creative approaches are key. So creative approaches to democratic information, conversation, democratic deliberation, and democratic education. And really, what they've told me is we need this in 3 places. We've got to have this in schools. We've got to have large-scale public information campaigns co-created with young people all over the internet and digital content. But then we also need in-person democratic hubs or centres where people can walk in and have conversations and use creative approaches to democratic deliberation and getting this baseline information. You know, I've got young people who are saying to me, I don't even know what the word democracy means. I didn't even know that we lived in a democratic country. I don't know what the difference is between parliament and government. I had one 18-year-old who was so angry, and she'd voted before, and she said, I'm never going to vote again. And when I got down to it and worked out what it was, she said, I've worked out that she was talking about that she was angry about how her vote was counted. So I really quickly talked to her about first past the post and proportional representation and the difference between the two. And then she was furious because she was like, why has no one explained this to me?
Yeah.
How have I got through the whole of my school life and come out the other end not understanding this?
Yeah.
60 to 90% of people that I've surveyed don't know the difference between a councillor, an MP, or a devolved member of parliament. And this is a problem. So, we're going into a general election, but people in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, the majority of them don't understand what their MP does and what their devolved member of parliament does and what's devolved. So MPs don't look after health and education and transport and a whole other load of areas that are devolved. But we're very England-centric in our news and media, and we concentrate on that. So democratic education and information needs to be the focus going forward. But right now, people need to register to vote before the 18th of June. They need to, or before the 19th of June for the postal vote. And then they've got until the 26th of June to register for voter ID, which is this new thing that's come in. And lots of young people particularly aren't going to have the right kind of voter ID. So they can go online to the Electoral Commission website and they can apply for free voter ID. So there's lots of different types of ID that so anyone of any age can go onto that Electoral Commission website and check whether their voter ID, whether it's their bus pass, whether it's their passport or their driving license is right.
Yeah.
And if they haven't got the right thing, then they can apply for it. But they've got to get it before that deadline. So that's only 5 weeks that they've got to do that.
So they know.
But we can't keep going into this cycle.
No.
We've got 6 weeks now, and we've got to change that cycle because then there'll be tumbleweed after the 4th of July, and suddenly democratic education and information and how we involve young people will fall off the news agenda, and that's what we have to change.
Which is why we've got you on today, which is brilliant to talk through what we need to do. Just to pick up on that point there, you talk about being England-centric. Just an honest response to that. I work on a show called Morning Live, and I work with the team here, and actually it's one of the main things that comes up quite a lot in the meetings about making sure that we're all over the UK, not just England. Like, I agree, nothing's perfect. We can improve on all kinds of things, but it is a discussion that you hear across the BBC in terms of making sure the advice is for everyone around the UK, because of course it's very different. Even like the voting we talked about in Scotland today at 14, and the school holidays will be on when the general election's on. Being aware of all of that is really, really important, which I know is something you do brilliantly with Democracy Box. I wonder, just going away from younger people just for a second, across the board, I just wonder, Yvonne, if people are scared sometimes to ask a question about politics because they maybe think it's something we should know, but like you said, it's never been taught.
Absolutely, and it gets really hard to admit to. So there's a shame attached to it. And one of the young co-creators very early on came up with the tagline, "No shame, no blame." And it's very hard. You come out of school, you're supposed to have learnt it through osmosis, you become an adult, and then there's a silence wrapped around this lack of knowledge that we carry with us. And then we go on to become parents and educators as adults. And so this broken cycle of storytelling carries on. So I'm now working with, teachers and they're going, we don't know this stuff. I'm working with colleagues in, broadcast who are going, we don't know some of these basics. So it's really problematic. So we need to change that cycle of storytelling. And the devolve thing, I think COVID did more in the time that we're in that global pandemic for those 2 years than had happened for the 20 years previously in getting people to start to understand devolution and, what areas were devolved and who was responsible for what. I think we have to do, there was nothing when I first started this work in 2019. There wasn't one place that I could go to online that simply told me how our whole UK worked, simply and succinctly.
Yvonne,
so that's what I've worked on.
I'm looking at the text here, 85058 on 5 Live. Yvonne is staying with us to talk more about this. You're definitely getting people talking. That's what we want. Yvonne Murphy is from Democracy Box. We'll be joined by 2 other experts to answer all your questions about voting, about the general election campaign. It's day 1 here on 5 Live. We'll, of course, bring you all the latest. And like I say, after 3 o'clock, you can ask our